Thank you, everyone, for coming back and listening to yet another incredible interview. I have Shelly with me today. I have known Shelly or of Shelly for what, about a year and a half,
Yeah,
somewhere
probably.
there on Instagram. She is a wealth of information and knowledge and wisdom, and so I thought it would be incredible to have her on here so she could share with you what she has learned through not only just the deconstruction process, the healing, as well as starting new endeavors in her life as well. And so, Shelly, thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure, an honor. Yeah.
So let's go ahead and just for the audience, for people that may not know you, would you just take a moment and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. Well, my name is Shelly Snowportia. I am an author and a screenwriter and a publishing coach. And so I have basically different facets of the job of writing.
Yeah, you do an awful lot, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but she is one busy lady. So would you take a moment and just kind of tell us a little bit about your religious background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in the Independent Fundamental Baptist cult. And we were just I thought we were more fringe than I guess we were for a good many years. I mean, definitely fringe, but anyway. Yeah, and so I left when I was 18 from my home and moved and went to the college. I consider it the cult college. And from there, I met my husband, who was not raised in it, thought it was crazy town. And so we ended up getting married and moving overseas, where I lived for a few years. And it was there really that, growing up in a different culture and a culture that definitely experiences a form of Christianity and also, an evangelicalism within another country, I was able to basically release that or come to the understanding that I was raised in a cult.
Hmm.
And from there, I kind of dug in. I guess we'll get into it a little bit more, but I did have a period of time where I was just like, if I was born in a cult and this was all fake, then what's real? Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so, yeah, but my kids were little at the time, and so I just kind of dug my heels in a little bit deeper. And then when my kids were teenagers, we moved back to the States, and I worked for a large evangelical church here in the St. Louis area. Until I didn't. About 3.5 years in, it was much sooner, but I could only take it up to that point, and so I left at that time while
Hmm.
my husband continued to work there. And
Wow.
yeah, and he continued to work there until about 18 months ago. Yeah.
Hmm. So he is now left.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So it had to be an incredible shock for you when it first dawned as like, well, I'm in a cult, right?
Yeah.
So knowing that and having that experience, like when did it finally hit you? Was it an aha moment? Was it a series of things? And how did you process that part?
Yeah, I think so. When we first moved overseas, like I said, my husband didn't grow up in it. And so, and the country we lived in was Romania. And so Christianity or the Orthodox Church is very much a part of culture.
Okay.
Um, and so viewing that as tradition and not necessarily dogma started to open my mind. I knew my husband didn't believe everything that I grew up with, but he also didn't know the concepts, especially as a woman, that
Hmm.
were taught. And that was just not something that I discussed with him until later in our marriage. So I think piece by piece, I started to see that, oh, they have a different form of Christianity. And I was very judgmental because, hello, I grew up in a cult, but um, you're just taught to be that way.
Yeah.
If they don't do it our way, it's, the devil's way,
Yep.
basically. And so, I just started to have evidence in my life that some of that stuff wasn't true.
Got it. Okay.
And yeah, and then I kind of really leaned into, well, no, I can't say that I did, not right away. there was a point that we'd lived over there for a few years, and I was like, no one here grew up like I did. No one follows these rules. My daughter is growing up and she's going to be, like, I don't know, eaten by Satan. I don't know what I was thinking, but it's like I've got to get home and take her to this conference. I mean, she was probably 5 or 6. And I went back and it was so bizarre. I mean, I'm in this room, like in the auditorium with thousands of women. It was a women's conference. And I'm just like, this is not real. Like there's no way these people believe this, because I've been out there and it doesn't work that way.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and so it took me a while still to fully release like that I don't think that way, but it was this tug of war really, like what's true, what's not. I often tell people that if you've read The Hunger Games or watched the movies, they play that real or not real game
Yeah.
where you have to stop and be like, is this real or is it not real? Because the mind games that they've been through don't always allow them to trust that they are seeing things correctly. And I feel like I do go throughout my life with a lot of that still, yeah. So I
So
stop myself. Yeah.
did your daughter, and knowing how you thought you were going to raise her,
Mm.
did that whole situation really open your eyes to, do I want to raise my daughter in this type of environment?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, there were things that I would push back on. So if you've seen the documentary that's really popular right now, the Shiny Happy People.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was actually part of that as well. I'm, not the Duggars' parents' age. I'm like 6 years or 8 years younger than them. And so I'm not as young as their children. I came in this weird spot where the curriculum was being developed, but I was already like in junior high and
Wow.
high school, so I
Sure.
never caught that end. But by the time I went to college, I was invited by Bill Gothard to come to headquarters. And so that those the teachings that were taught were given to me at a later age. And like, as a teenager, like you need to discipline your children this way. Or even like I think the first time I got the book that teaches you to like hit your children with a stick as infants, um, I think it was when I found out I was pregnant by somebody in the church. Yeah. And
Wow.
so yeah, it's just like these I would push back on those type of things already, like the ones that seemed extreme to me, the most extreme of the extreme.
Yeah.
And so I knew that there were some things that I did not want to raise my daughter in. But then there were so many things that were programmed a lot earlier,
Mm.
that I'm like, but if I don't, her soul is destined to hell, So it was a very weird tug of war for me. And she was probably about 10 years old by the time I released all of that.
Speaking of releasing all of that, when you were walking through that, we'll just call it deconstruction period, where you're analyzing and kind of thinking through all that and the role it would play with her, like you had mentioned, Satan's going to eat my children, or, Satan's going to, take my daughter to hell. What were some things that helped you on that healing path, that
Mm.
helped impact your parenting? Yeah, I know.
I don't, yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah, I know.
I've,
This is just because I realize, and let me give you a little time to think through that, if you even want to answer it, because I realize that we talk a lot about deconstruction and kind of the transitions that we make. We don't talk a lot about deconstruction and the impact it has on us as parents a lot, you know. And I just, I had to deal with this with my kids.
yeah.
And so I'm just curious if you had some things that helped you process it and heal, to go from that mindset of, hey, I don't fear my child going to hell anymore, or do I still, but this is what I do, or things like that.
Yeah, I think that it's a lot of mental gymnastics, really.
Mhm.
And I don't speak as some kind of expert on this because I think I've done a lot that is good because I've maintained an open relationship with my children, open communication, and not that they tell me everything. And any parent who thinks they do,
No way.
right, fooling themselves.
Nor do
But
we want
anyway,
to know everything, right? We don't want to
no.
know everything at the same time.
Oh yeah, there have been times where my boys were like, "Mom, let me tell you this or that," and I'm just like, "Do I want to know it? Do I? Do I?"
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so yeah, sorry, I'm struggling. Where did I leave off? What was I supposed to answer again? Oh, well,
Oh,
like the
you're
things that
talking
helps
about,
me.
what were
Yeah.
some things that helped you kind of make that transition with your daughter or your kids in that
Yeah.
situation?
I'm trying to think really of, so I think support. The more open and honest I was and am, which, is difficult sometimes simply because I was taught from a very early age that appearance matters and that's what matters. And
Mhm.
so you keep a lot to yourself because you always blame yourself for not keeping the rules better and if anything fails. So just starting to open up and like test the waters, that was very helpful for me because I was able to find people with whom I could have real conversations. Um, Even though they were really scary for me.
Right.
Um, I also joined a Facebook group for survivors of, yeah, it was called Sisterhood of the Traveling Culottes because we had to wear culottes. And yeah, it was like right at the beginning when they started Facebook groups too.
Wow.
Yeah, and so
That's old school.
it's so old school. Like I remember kind of trolling on Facebook to see like, am I the only one? And the way you could tell is if the dress code changed.
Hmm.
So, or if they were hiding behind their child who was pretty tall and like to not be able to see them like in every picture, to see what they were wearing, like you would know and be like, I bet she's safe. I bet I could reach out to her.
Hmm.
And
Definitely.
so I started to do that and just kind of reach out for a lifeline. Like, are you going through this? Can you help me?
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it's kind of similar because when I left, I had a very open conversation with my kids of why I was doing. I didn't impress that upon them. I said, hey, listen, you can choose whatever path you want. But this is where I'm at. And it's probably going to get ugly before it gets better. Right. I was just real with them. Right. And I wanted them to, as we've always done here, and my ex-wife is really good at this as well, is I wanted them to understand they could critically think and teach them to critically think, to ask questions, to not be shy of questions, to say, hey, ask me anything you want and I'll tell you, you know.
Yeah.
And so we opened up as a family a lot walking through that. And when you talk about support, I was thankful to have her support with that as well as we support each other. But also for me, because as a former pastor, um, I found community in IG,
Yeah.
right? Instagram. I never knew it was there, right? And I hop on one day, go, oh, they might understand, and they might understand, right? And suddenly, you're in this world of people that kind of like, oh, you too, and
Yes.
it's weird because you're like, okay, I'm not the only one, right?
It's so isolating. Yeah, you feel very, very alone, like you're the only one. Like my husband was a pastor as well, and he's still he's still a believer. I hate
Mhm.
that phrase, but whatever. He, yeah. And so it's been, and there's always been that strain of like, how far are you going to go with this? But the first conversation I had with him that I was basically having a mental breakdown was, I don't know what I believe. I think I don't believe in anything anymore. And that really sucks for you, you know? And he was just like, well, the God I believe in can handle any question, like anything. It's okay. And we've had a home and he grew up much like this, where we did talk about everything. I was the one who thought that, because I was taught this way, that women are supposed to have, these little parameters, and you're not supposed to share this, that, and the other, you know. And so the more I was able to lean into the openness, the better things fared. Yeah.
It's neat to hear that, for lack of better words, as a believer for him, that you guys still have those open and honest conversations, and there's love and acceptance on both sides.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't think that it would be this way either. Like, I was very scared that, well, he'll be obligated to divorce me because, now he's unequally yoked. What does that even mean? We have different beliefs,
Yeah.
all of the things. And the conversations are not easy. Even now, like, it's easier for me to just be like, well, let me tell you what I think about that story now. And I will, you know.
Yeah.
And he engages in the conversation. And sometimes, when it comes to that, like, but life with Jesus is better discussion, I'm just
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's great. Like, I am now at the place to where I'm like, cool, if you want to have that and follow the teachings of, like, the actual nice things that Jesus did, cool, good for you. I'm no longer going to live my life thinking that it is my responsibility to save the world from damnation. Like,
Right.
that's not
Yeah.
a thing for me.
Well, and it
So
is rare. It is rare to have a couple that unequally yoked, right? To have two very different beliefs and yet still make it work. That's a testament to really, actually, I think what love is.
yeah,
When it comes
yeah,
right.
and I think that probably because I was raised so much more literal than my
Mhm.
husband was, for him it's more of like a way of life. And sure, yeah, I'll believe that he is, just living the best life that he can. But at the end of the day, he has always, like, from the time we got married, said that people over principles, always. Like, that is his number one priority. And he's always said it. Like, my kids know it. They'll
Yeah.
say the same thing to you, right? And
Yeah.
he proves it. That's the thing. Like, I
Mhm.
was going through a really dark and hard time through this transition, and I was complaining to my therapist and, saying this and that, and the whole idea of, like, well, how can the church continue to say that being gay is a sin? Like, how is this possible? And it's going on and on. And, like, my husband still goes to church and he still does this, I'm like rattling off. I'm like, I think there are Christians who don't believe this. So, what is the church thinking and saying? And anyways, so I had told her the story of when one of my dearest friends had a son that came out. She was divorced from her husband, and the son, she was honest with his mom, and then he decided that I'm going to go tell dad too, because I just feel like I need to. And so he did, and the dad threw him out of the house, told him he couldn't come back, took his car keys and his car, took his phone from him, left my friend to have to finance everything. And when my husband heard, he's just like, what? Like, his son, it's a person, it's his son. And so we had recently bought our youngest a new vehicle, well, a used vehicle, but
Yeah.
he had just finished high school and about to go to college. So we, helped him get his first car, and, well, not the old hand me down that was my car. Anyway, so we had that, extra vehicle that we had just put on a used car lot. And my husband gets on the phone, calls up the used car lot. It's a friend of his who owns it. And he's just like, hey, um, can I give that car away? Told him the story. And he's like, yeah, it's your car, dude. Like, tell him to come up here and, like, sign the papers. They'll have to pay whatever tax thing that, for registration and all this stuff. I'm like, and he's like, okay, cool. So, and my therapist was like, so he doesn't actually believe that the gays are bad. Like, and she just helped me, I think, see so much of, and I've been through a lot of therapy, and I still, like, I recently had a therapy session of, like, I'm doing all of this work right now publicly, and I know that I don't want to hurt my husband, because sometimes he takes it personally. Sometimes it feels not great. that's not what I want. And I was able through, this therapy kind of EMDR thing, I guess, um,
Yep.
kind of bring the things together and understand that there's so much truth that we do share
Hmm.
because of the evidence in our lives and in our home, of that support. And I consider myself really lucky.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds amazing because there's a guy that is an example that says, hey, I believe and I'm going to act on that, on the love of that belief, right? Like people are more important than systems or structures or anything like that. I mean, that's an incredible story. And that's why I think even within the church, there are people that, hey, don't view homosexuality as wrong, that say, and love people genuinely.
Yeah.
Have different
Yeah.
beliefs than what I may believe now, or you, or what have you. It doesn't make them bad people. At
Yeah.
all. In fact, there are some good people. So that's that's rare. That's awesome.
And it's so different from my experience, right? Like mine was all or nothing.
Yes.
It was, you know what I mean? Like love, the opposite of love is allowing these people to be like sinful, or it's just like it was so bizarre and twisted. But like I recently joined a barbershop chorus, and every Tuesday night I go into this Episcopal church and we have practice, which totally would have triggered me
Uh-huh.
before. But thanks to therapy. um, but I walked in, and I don't know if they've had to sign up for that long. Maybe they haven't. I just noticed. But this last Tuesday, I walked in and there was this big sign that had a rainbow flag on it. And it said, "For the hurt the church has caused, we are sorry." That's
Wow.
all it said. And I was like,
That's huge
oh,
though,
I
right?
mean, and so I can look at people like my husband and be like, oh, you just have a different definition.
Hmm. Hmm.
And though I feel like for me, I'm like, oh, the system and the institution and all of that, I don't know if you can do it without being corrupt. I'm still working through those thoughts.
Yeah.
But um, so I'm out. And it may just be I'm taking a break. I don't know. But I can understand
Hmm.
that some people aren't raised that way and aren't like that.
And I think
It
it's
didn't.
important to note here as well that when you're in it and then you leave it, I think there's a knee-jerk reaction. A lot of people, like on IG or Facebook or whatever have you, or just people in general that have left it, that become very angry when people don't leave. And they forget that, hey, I used to be that person, or I used to be in that situation, or I was raised. I mean, like, there's a lack of empathy
Yeah.
that direction as well. And that's unfortunate. I think with the healing process, as you begin to heal, you begin to understand that, see that. And then, I mean, do you go back or not? I mean, me personally, as of right now, I can't see myself ever going back, knowing the systems and the structure and everything like that. So I just did a reel on children's ministry. And I was just being honest about my views of church and children's ministry. But there are people that are believing that aren't necessarily doing it out of, being angry or spiteful or
Yeah.
like wanting to impress it upon other people, or I'm saying, like, you can't lump everybody in the same thing, I guess is what you're saying. Much like you said, your husband
Yeah.
has a different definition probably or understanding of belief than a lot of other people. So
Yeah, absolutely. I can't say I was always there though. Did you go through a phase? I know I did, of like, I hate everything about it and it should
oh
burn.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. Not just me.
Oh my
Good.
God. Shelly, if you'd seen my Instagram page before it became what it is, I mean, I threw up everything that was angry, was vengeful. I mean, and because here I am, just like, hey, my whole world shifted being a pastor, after 25 years. And I was like, man, I felt like I was lied to, or I felt like, they pulled the wool over my eyes, and this is abuse and spiritual abuse and neglect, and this isn't love and everything. And I was just angry. And I remember meeting with Gold Bear Media, my good friend is the owner of that, and I asked her to help me do my page, and she looked at it and she kind of giggled and she goes, "Okay, what is your what are you trying to say here?" And she's like, I go, "Well, I was thinking this." She goes, "Okay, we're gonna have to remove all of this and delete all the memes and everything like this because it's not the direction you want to go." Right? It was just anger. It was something that I just had to get through to heal.
Yes, and I think that's an important distinction too, because often in any church scenario, I think that anger is frowned upon, but it's
Yeah.
actually, yeah, so I think it's an appropriate reaction to some things that are pretty horrific. So we should be upset about them. Um, but it's also something to go through and like, what is it that made you angry and how do you fix those things? Because just being so angry about it all the time, that of course isn't healthy. But
Anger is a
it
great
serves a
teacher,
purpose.
right?
Yes, yes,
Great revealer, and you shouldn't push it down or away and consider it sin. You should embrace it and go, "Okay, what is my body? What is my mind trying to teach me here?" So I think that's
yeah.
great. So that kind of leads me into this next question. Are you spiritual at all? Why or why not?
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes. I think that the great mystery still fascinates me. I love to listen to Bart Ehrman's podcast.
Oh, isn't he awesome?
So great. Like I
Oh,
like his books. I've read a few.
same here.
Um, but like, what'd you say?
Same here. That's what I read when I
Yeah.
first started deconstructing.
Yes. Yes. But they are very academic. And so sometimes they're like, okay, wait, did I read that right? Do I go back? Or I listened to one of them and I'm like, I'm not going to do that again because what the heck? I don't know where he is right now. Anyway, but when he is interviewed, and I feel like he's a great writer and researcher, but he is a phenomenal teacher. Right? And
Yes.
so, that all that stuff fascinates me still. I want to know how that fits in. How does the Jesus story work? And how do people relate to God? Like, I don't know. I'm not an atheist, so um, and for whoever lands there is fine. But for me, I just feel like why land? There's something, whatever this is that connects us, or um, gives us these hopes that maybe there's something else out there or after or whatever. It just feels hard for me personally to deny the existence of something mystical.
Hmm.
Um, so I just like to learn about it.
I, I couldn't agree with more. Matter of fact, when I left religion, nature, the world, everything became bigger.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like more fascinating. Um, like, oh my God, this is so cool. And I would agree. I was like, everybody usually asks me, it's like, where are you? What do you believe? Are you an atheist or agnostic? And I refuse to answer that question. I would
Yeah.
answer the way you answer, and it's like, hey, every day I'm learning. And I may say no way, and next day I may go, oh wow, yeah, yes. And people like you or myself that have been put in a box, the last thing we want to do is box ourselves for the benefit of other people, right?
Yes.
We don't want to say, hey, listen, I'm going to tell you I'm this, and you're going to draw your own conclusions based on your own experience and put me somewhere that I'm not,
Yeah.
that I don't really identify with. And so I'm just going to leave it vague, and I'm okay with not having the so-called this is me nailed down, right?
Yes, absolutely. I feel the exact same way. Do you think that it has something to do with how involved and we were in the church, as maybe like employees and that stuff? Because I see even now, people will go to my husband and be like, "What is happening to your wife?" And how can you do all this work? Because he's still like he has a nonprofit. It's not under a church or anything. Um, but he expresses his faith still, and they'll be like, well, how can he go and like work with churches and help children with coats and all this stuff? And like, she's over here saying this crap. And I'm like, babe, I never once, when did I ever say that Jesus is no longer my homie and all of you are stupid? Like, I've never, ever, ever said that. Never.
You
So,
don't
like,
have to. When you leave religion, it's assumed,
yes,
right?
yes,
I mean, like,
exactly.
because I actually like Jesus more, or who he was or stood for from what we understand. I like him more now than when I was in the church. Right?
I agree.
People
Yeah.
assume that, oh, he left the church, so he doesn't put any value in anything of the Bible or anything like that. Now, there's a lot of things, yes, I'm like, no.
Oh, sure. Yes, of course.
Whatever have you. But yeah, people will assume that and put pressure upon you or pressure upon your husband or somebody else trying to get more information.
Yeah, and it just draws me further away from the institution of the church because I know that their religiosity and their, views and their terms or whatever it is that they've been taught demand that they think that and act that way, which is hard. And I'm like, why would that ever bring me back? Like, you have my number. We were colleagues for 3.5 years. Like, you
Yeah.
don't have
Did
to
you lose my number
chastise.
or what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't chastise my husband because, his wife didn't show up to church. Like, what? Like, you know me. Why are you treating me this way and assuming a bunch of stuff? And yeah, it just is like another affirmation that, like, no, I'm good. Don't
Yeah.
really need that. And what is the church? Like, if you look back at the history of it, it's like it was a group of people gathering and discussing and thinking and asking questions. And not that anymore. It's an institution
It's an
for
institution
profit.
of control. And
Yeah.
because they can't control you, they're going to put pressure upon your husband.
Yeah.
Really.
I mean, because obviously I'm the woman.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, like, the church has such a great track record when it comes to how they treat you. It's great. Yeah.
I know. I
For
know.
all the sarcasm font is on.
Correct.
Okay. So I could talk to you about all day about all that, but I want to kind of get into something here. You are a novelist, a screenwriter, and a publishing coach. All right. What fuels your passion for all of those? Like, how, I mean, those are huge endeavors. Like, how did you land on that?
Oh wow. Yeah, how did I land? I first and foremost, I have written and emoted through writing throughout my life. My dad was a prolific poet.
Oh,
When chat rooms online were like new and they were portrayed on TV as like predators who lurked. My dad was in poetry chat rooms and he was voted best poet for a few years in a row, got a book deal, all that stuff. And
nice.
so, yeah, I always really looked up to him. And he passed away suddenly in
Oh,
2011.
sorry.
And thank you. When that happened, I could not process my emotions without writing. And I started a story. Um, I was like deep into my deconstruction at the time. And I knew I wasn't honest with him before he passed. Like the first time I wore jeans in front of my dad, I was 30 years old.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so,
Well, it's different with family, right? I mean,
yes.
it's so
Yeah.
personal.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. And so, I started writing a story and I did hesitate. It was hard because I was like, oh, if I write some of the stuff, will people just like come out and be like, like, what does she believe? And I realized I had a lot of freedom within fiction. Like there's mysticism in my book,
Yeah.
like a spirit guide and stuff. And so, yeah, it's just, it was a way for me to kind of like emote and unpack what I was going through. I can see very much, especially now, looking back at it, they're being recorded for audio. Yeah, now. And so I look back as we're going through some of the scripts and I was just like, oh gosh, wow, there's so much more of me in this book than I thought there was, you know. Um, so I processed a lot through my novel writing and my next novel. So I am releasing a novel in April. I'm so excited.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
my next. Thank you, thank you. And that one is like super on the nose. Not gonna lie.
So have you seen
So
a progression of from when you began deconstructing your writing to where you are now? Like, have you been able to look at your writing and see if it's changed?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, outside of I feel like I'm a much better writer just because, the more you write, the more practice you get, the better you get. But 100%, like by the end of my trilogy, I was no longer feeling like, oh, what are people going to say? I've got to hide a little bit. I was just like, yeah, I even threw in a swear word in the last chapter. you know? So, um, just to kind of reveal more and more of myself, I think. And then I wrote a children's book in 2020, and that one was very clear of a message of like for children, you are good. It
Oh,
is inside you.
yep, yep.
However you express that love is up to you, but that's what's in there. And so again, like yes, the progression is totally there. And the next one coming out is called The Cheating Wife. My husband, yeah, my husband has one request because all of my other books just have like my name at the bottom. And he's like, could you maybe put written by so it's not The Cheating Wife, Shelly Snow Portia? I'm like, yeah,
Sure, I can do
I'm comfortable with that.
that.
But they're largely based on people, on the stories and things that happened. Like with, for instance, with The Cheating Wife, we witnessed the defacement of someone's property that
Hmm,
said cheating wife across the front. And it's so jarring, right?
yeah.
And a lot of conversations, but what it boiled down to was like, is she safe?
Hmm,
And like what kind of asshole does that? Like, oh, am I supposed to swear or not swear?
fine. It's fine.
Oh,
You can drop all kind of words here. It's all good.
okay. Oh, thanks. But yeah, like that was where I landed. I was like, what? Who does that? And what is she okay? Anyway, so I just made up a story in my head of, an abused woman and how there's basically a modern day Scarlet Letter, and how the community treats her. And anyway, so a situation with a mega church, it's all there. It'll all be there. It'll all be amazing, hopefully.
Sure it will be. So, um, we'll get back to writing in a second, but
Yeah.
what have you, throughout this whole process, throughout your life journey, okay, what are you most proud of in your life? I know that's really difficult question, right? Because there's multiple things that immediately would come to my mind, right?
Yeah,
Kid,
yeah.
marriage, stuff like that. But is there something that you're most proud of?
Yeah,
Or
I mean, I think I am really proud of my kids and just the type of mom I have been able to be. I'm really proud of that. But I think that the most proud I am of a personal accomplishment is that I have been able to undo some of the really deep programming of having to hide. It's taken me a long time to understand that I am free to be who I am. And that's probably really fresh, Brad. Like I'm 48, right?
yeah.
And it's like I'm almost 50 years old and I just now feel like, oh, I'm kind of okay. you know?
Yeah.
Like I like myself. I am a kind, generous, open person and I don't have to lie. I mean, like I was such a freaking liar when you think about it,
Mm,
you know?
mhm.
Never honest about my opinion, never honest about my thoughts, closed off. Even when I first started, reading like Bart Ehrman,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have shared that before. Not with you, not with my husband. Now of course he knows and we talk about things and like I don't know, it's just I'm free. I feel like I'm finally free. Yeah. So I'm
That's
proud of that.
if it helps you feel any better and more, encouraging is the fact that I'm 52 and I finally feel that way now. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
like, it's funny because in church, you're always taught, hey, don't wear a mask. God knows who you really are. When all I did was wear a mask because I was supposed to be somebody, the Bible, not the Bible, the organization where it told me I was supposed to be like, right. if I was something other than that, then I wasn't going to be a good pastor, right? Or, people would pick on you or whatever have you, right? There was shame and fear and everything like there, and you didn't want to hurt other people. So I get that. I love that. Just finally free, truly free to be your authentic self. Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I'm going to ask you kind of just real quickly go through things, but share with us your books. Like, where did it start and how many have you done and what are you doing now?
Yeah, so I started with the first book when my dad passed away. Well, I started writing it then. I didn't publish it and finish it until, I don't know, 6, 7 years later. And then I got the bug and just wanted to do it. And I set out to write a trilogy. And so I pumped out the next 2 books. It's a full trilogy. And it's a story. It's called Tracing Time.
Okay.
Tracing Time is the trilogy, so you can look it up anywhere books are sold. In digital form, it is free on Amazon and Google Books. So just download it, or borrow it from your Libby app. Some libraries have it, some don't. So you have to see if yours carries it. What else? And then after that, I have my children's book. It's called The Hug Who Had No Arms.
I have seen that one.
So I feel like I have one here, right? Yeah, The Hug Who Had No Arms. And then I have 3 or 4 different languages in that book. So yeah, we have Spanish, the Spanish hug who had no arms, the Romanian hug who had no arms, because we're a Romanian family, and the Persian hug. So I think it's 3. The Persian hug who had no arms.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then after that, I haven't written in a while. I've worked on my publishing, my coaching business. Now I actually have everything online. I don't do personal coaching anymore. I just direct people to my website that has everything you need, so that Shelly doesn't have to spend all her time coaching.
That's a brilliant. Fun.
Yeah. Yes, and so my next one is The Cheating Wife. So I'm excited about it. David Hayward from the Naked Pastor. Yeah, he's doing my book cover. So.
Awesome. I just talked to him. I think he's going to be on here for an interview as well for this page.
Oh, good. Good. Yeah, he's great.
So kind.
So kind.
I mean, like, I remember about a year ago, we had done one IG live, which was the most nervous I think I'd ever been in my life. Because he said, we'll just hop on and talk. I'm like, oh, and he just out of the blue sent me one of his books and said, hey, I was thinking about you, thought you'd enjoy this.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, he's a busy person. He's got lots of, obviously stuff on his plate. And for him to just take the time to do that was just incredibly kind. So that's exciting that he's doing that for you.
I know.
Amazing.
Yeah. And talk about kind, though. He, the first time I reached out to him, I mean, maybe we had chatted a little bit on Instagram, but I, get his newsletter. And so for one of them, I don't know what it was that I replied to. And I was like, okay, I have your book, Till Doubt Do Us Part, for married couples, right? And I'm like, what does your wife say? And I don't know how rude I was about it. But I'm like, what women are doing this work? I want to hear from the woman. What does your wife say about this? And he was so generous and kind. Probably saw exactly where I was. Shelly. But anyway, yeah, he's so gracious. So gracious. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, that's awesome. Okay. So as we wrap this up a little bit, I always ask this question, I do. How do people find and follow you and purchase your books?
Yeah, I'm just my name everywhere you find, stuff. So my book will be on Amazon, on Google, on Target.com. It was once. I don't know if they still carry it, but Shelly Snow Pordea, Pordea. And I'm on Instagram mostly. That's where I spend a lot of my time. I'm on TikTok, but not on TikTok.
I have tried to hop on TikTok recently, and I realized that I'm just old. Okay, so
I know, me
too. I'm just trying to create my own little avenue that's me, right? But I people do a phenomenal job on TikTok. I don't
Yes.
know if I'm one of those, but
I mean, it seems like it would take forever. And like I'm on there because Abraham Piper, hello,
huh?
and and for hair tips. Like I get a lot of great hair tips on TikTok. So
Oh,
yeah.
that's amazing. So for those that are watching this, you probably already figured out that underneath her bio on this page, you'll be able to find her links as well. Shelly, I can't thank you enough for being here, sharing your wisdom, your insight. For those that are not following Shelly on IG or purchasing her books, please check them out. She's phenomenal. She's authentic. I think that's what I love most about you is how
Mm.
authentic you are, and how just down to earth, and real in the sense that, hey, you know, what you see is what you get, and this is just me, and I love me. And if you don't, that's okay. But I'm not changing me. And so I am thankful for you and the example you put out there for your deconstruction journey, your process of healing, that you've put the effort into that and that you found multiple passions that you love. So thank you so much for being here. I hope we can talk again soon. And once again, everybody, if you are not following Shelly, go give her a follow and read her work. She's outstanding. So thank you very much for being here, Shelly.
Oh, thank you, Brad. It's always a pleasure to chat with you for sure.
All right. Well, to everybody out there, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Shelly, for joining us, and we'll catch you later.
Okay.
All right.